Okay, so today we're going to do a small demo, a basic watercolor demo. So this is technique will be just based on wet on dry. So I've mixed some colors here. As you can see, I've mixed. I've added a few colors onto my palette. As usual, I put the colors that I need in the palette here, and I add a little bit of white, a little bit of water to each color just to keep it wet. And so I've got my colors all laid out. I'm ready to paint. I've got my palette sitting here. My palette's sitting here. It's ready to go. It's fairly clean. At least it's dry anyway. And so what we're going to do is I've just drawn a very, very simple composition of a couple of apples and a plum. And so I'm going to create a very basic painting to show you that technique of wet on dry. Okay, so like we did in the other process, or like we've done in the other demos, is we're doing that building up of color, right? So we're going to start with the lightest area to start with. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to leave some whites of the paper in areas where I think glare, for example, would occur on top of the apple or the peach. So really in those areas, I've actually sketched them. It's hard to see them, but I've sketched out the apples here and the plum very, very lightly in pencil. And then I've added a little bit of, you can barely see it, it's just like a little glare area. Okay, so that helps me remember where that area is. And so what I'm going to do is mix a little bit of color. I think for this one I'm going to use a little bit of, just a little bit of intense green with some yellow ochre. I'll put those together because I think that actually will work. And like I said, this will be a very, very quick demo, and it will give you an idea of how we're going to approach things. And I'm going to use a lot of water at first, just because I want to create a light area first. Okay, so this is going to be very, very light. I'm going to test it. I always test a little bit on the side here just to see how it's going to go. And that's about right for me right now. It might even be a little bit lighter. Might add a little bit more yellow to that, just to kind of lighten it up and warm it up a little bit too as well. Okay. I think we got it. It's a little warmer there, and it's a little green. So again, I'm going to leave this area white, but I'm going to start with the lightest area. The lightest area is all in here. Okay, and I'm going to just sort of lay the color out in this area like this. Okay, and just freely add it, just freehand. Don't get too caught up on how, you know, all the brush strokes and those kinds of things. Just sort of lay your colors down. You know that most of it's like this, so there we go. I've got, you know, the basic shape there. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one too, because the other one's very similar in color. Just very light color of the apple. Don't worry if the colors sort of spill in right now together. We'll let them dry. I'll just add them here. Remember, I'm leaving this area white. Okay. And I'm leaving some other areas here too as well, just for the darker areas. Okay. So those are some of the lightest colors in the image. And then one of the lightest colors actually is the ground. It's actually almost white. So we're going to leave that for now too as well. Again, we're building up the color. So I'm going to add a little bit more darker color now. I'm going to add a little yellow ochre to this because there is some yellow ochre. I'm going to add a little touch of burnt umber, one of my favorite colors. Okay. We'll just test it out to see how that's going to go. And I'm going to add that, actually I'm going to add a little more green here. And that burnt umber. Okay. And we're going to test that out, see how that, okay, that's fairly dark. Alright. So that dark area is probably going to be somewhere in here. So I'm just going to lay it. Now the color's not 100%, you notice the color's not 100% drying. That's okay. It's actually, if you notice, the color sort of spilling into the other color. And so we're going to allow that to happen. We're also going to start to create this sort of dark area here. And I'm going to leave a little bit of the white along the edge here because there is a funny white area there. A little more dark. I'm going to add a little actual darker green right in here too as well. I'm going to do the same thing over here too. I tend to like to add a little bit of sepia sometimes too as well. Or sorry, burnt umber. Burnt umber. Add a little darker shade here. If I remember, if I start to get too dark, I can always just come back and add a little more water. Okay, so I'm adding water around the outside edge of that. Okay. Now I'm going to add a lot of water in this one, not a lot of water, but I'm going to clean off my brush a bit and just add a touch of water here because I want the color to spill out a bit to create that graded area. So I'm going to go all the way around the outside here and just kind of get that to spill out. Okay. You can sort of see the apple sort of showing itself. Added a bit more water again. Okay, and so we're getting sort of a graded area. Now there's a darker part on the bottom here I want to kind of get to. So I got a bit of a darker color there as well. Just along the bottom. Okay. And then define this a little more. Okay. And now I'm going to just add this here, and we'll just put this here like this. Okay, and we're going to add the watercolor here. Okay. Okay. I'm going to just add a little bit, some other areas of color here, just to give it some color. I added a bit of Hooker's green here actually, just to kind of give it some color variation. Okay, so you can sort of see the apples taking sort of shape. I'm going to add a little more color along the top area here. I'm going to add some yellow too as well because I think there's quite a bit of yellow in this apple. So I want to kind of get that in there. Now you notice I'm not waiting for it to dry. You can, and for the purpose of this demo I'm being a little quicker, but quite often I would allow some of this to dry first before putting it in. There's also a nice quality of the apple sort of when the water spills into itself. It has a really nice quality to it. And then, yeah, so there's also a little darker area here, which is about in there, just to kind of create that. And the color's starting to spill into itself. That's okay, again. And I'm going to let a lot of this dry. Now here's an area that we want to, a little darker area here. It gets a little darker on the bottom here, so I'm going to add a little bit of a really dark color right here. And the reason I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to create the shadow. Okay, the shadow is quite dark on this one. Now I'm going to lighten it a little bit at the edge. So shadows get really dark right in the beginning, okay, and then they start to taper off. The color desaturates a little bit as it kind of tapers off. So now I'm not going right up against the edge here, you'll see, because if I do, it'll spill in. And usually what I want to do is I want to wait for that to dry, but again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just sort of, I'm doing it fairly quickly here, so the colors are going to spill, and you know what, that's okay, that's okay. But you can sort of see, I've added some dark colors in here, right, and it's starting to sort of take shape a little bit. You can sort of see the bottom of the apple. Okay. We'll let that dry a little bit. Now, I also want to add just a touch of dark in this area too. It's fairly dark part of the apple. I want to create that. It's a really big, dark, almost shadowy area. And I'm using a little bit of burnt umber too as well. I use a lot of burnt umber. I don't use a lot of black. I use burnt umber to kind of create some of those areas of dark. I just add a little burnt umber in there. Okay, and you can sort of start to see now some of the shadows taking place here. Again, I'm not trying to be too delicate with, everything right now. I'm just kind of just trying to get a feeling. Now you'll also notice too something that will happen here is you'll notice the color starts to spill together. That's a wonderful thing. You kind of want that. So you should allow that in certain areas. Watercolor is all about sort of those happy accidents. So I'm going to lift a little bit of that up because I don't like how that. See how you can pat it with your paper towel, and it creates it. Sorry, it pulls up some of the colors. So I'm going to add a little bit more color here, just so I can kind of get the apple. And you can sort of see the glares in the apple now. They're all starting to come together. Again, it's not super defined because, again, I'm actually doing this fairly quickly. Again, a little faster than I probably should be because I'm waiting for it. I should be waiting for it to dry, but for the purposes of demo. But yeah, if you let it dry, you can you'll get a lot cleaner line. Okay. Now you can start to see the apple starting to come into to view. I'm going to get a little bit more definition on the outside of this one. Okay, there we go. We start to see a little more of the apple. We've got a nice glare there too. We've left a little bit of the glare there. I'm going to do the same thing on this one too as well.